Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today forcefully rejected a ceasefire proposal by Hamas, vowing to fight until a complete victory had been achieved over the militant group in Gaza. Now, this was a setback for Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who was in Israel hoping to build support for a humanitarian pause. The Senate vowed today voted down, I should say, a sweeping national security and border reform package after most Senate Republicans banded together with a handful of Democrats to reject the legislation that leadership itself helped to negotiate for months. The bill included more than $60 billion in aid for Ukraine as it fends off a Russian invasion and $14 billion for Israel in its war in Gaza. As we know, that aid has long been a top national security priority for President Biden. And former President Donald Trump's claim that he was immune from being prosecuted for any crimes he committed while trying to stay in office after losing the 2020 election was always a long shot. But in an opinion yesterday eviscerating his assertion, three federal appeals court judges portrayed his position as not only wrong on the law, but also repellent. Nikki Haley had a bad day yesterday. She was outvoted in Nevada's Republican presidential primary by a none of these candidates option on the ballot. Now, this was an embarrassment in a contest which she faced no direct competition. The primary, which awards no delegates, had seemed like a foregone conclusion as Trump chose not to take part in it because on Thursday he will instead participate in party-run caucuses where all of the state's 26 delegates will be awarded. And a bunch of influential folks who call themselves pro-Israel are going to spend millions and millions of dollars to challenge squad members. These are members in Congress who are particularly progressive. And according to these pro-Israel PACs, these individuals are not just progressive, they are anti-Israel. And Mark Melman, the president of Democratic Majority for Israel, whose PAC exclusively backs Democrats, plans to intervene as well. And a new study out says that Black adults who are exposed to news of police killings of unarmed Black people are more likely to suffer from poor sleep in the months to come rather than their white peers. Now, this study was just published in the Journal of Internal Medicine on Monday. This new research highlights the insidious toll police violence takes on the Black community. And Black women who develop high blood pressure before age 35 may have tripled the risk of having a stroke by middle age. And this is according to a new report. This finding come as the medical community has noted with concern that the rates of stroke are increasing among middle-aged adults, while stroke rates in older individuals have been steadily decreasing over the decades. The study will be presented next week at the American Stroke Association's International Conference in Phoenix, Arizona. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go deep, where we dig behind the headlines, and we bring you those stories that have people talking, or stories that people are particularly interested in. And today we're talking about Black children, because I care about Black children. I happen to be the mother of 3 Black children. So whenever I see an article or a report about Black kids, it always piques my interest. And this story is about Black children in foster care and the horrific number that are often languishing in foster care because they can't find or they don't get matched with families that want to adopt them. Black children are overrepresented in our foster care system in the US. They make up 22% of the children, although they are only 14% of the nation's populations. We're also learning that there are some particular obstacles that Black children face as Black families and others try to adopt them. I know my nonprofit, Special Needs Network, we have a program right now we're running in Los Angeles where we are providing interventions for foster care kids who have autism and other developmental disabilities. And I was just shocked at the number of kids that we are treating, mostly Black and brown kids, who have never, ever been diagnosed, who have never received the proper interventions, even though they have very, very visible signs of developmental delays or autism. So we know that in some parts of this country, kids in foster care are in crisis, and foster care parents oftentimes are overwhelmed and don't have the tools that they need to make sure these kids are getting, every advantage that they get. God bless foster parents. So this is not a critique of them. Anyone that's willing to bring children into their home, even temporarily, they deserve a lot of credit. It can be very challenging raising someone else's kids. And unfortunately, we know a lot of the kids in foster care have experienced trauma. I work with a lot of psychologists, and I hear some of these horrific stories of 5-year-olds who've been raped, literally raped by their adult male relatives, uncles, cousins, kids who had, been beaten badly, whose own parents, biological parents, have been so many stories in the news of, particularly in LA, of kids in foster care who have been abused, oftentimes by their own parents. So we know that kids in foster care face some tremendous obstacles. And so I'm super excited for my guest in this hour because they are foster care kids advocates, and they are trying to ensure that information is available and that something is done to really help improve the conditions of kids in foster care, and more importantly, help more of our Black kids in foster care actually get adopted into good homes. So when we come forward, Shantae Armstrong, who's a child welfare advocate, is going to join us. She's a leader of a project called the Embrace Project, and she's going to be releasing a report with some pretty important data regarding Black families and kids in foster care. Some really critical information I want everyone to hear. And also joining with Shantae is Sunshine Best. She's a doctoral candidate at Tulane University, and she's also a part of this Embrace Task Force. So I'm going to be talking to Shantae and Sunshine about some of the obstacles that parents face in trying to adopt Black children out of foster care, and what we can do as a society to make sure more of our kids, one, don't fall into foster care, and two, if they do, and they need to be adopted by other families, that we're doing everything we can to make those adoptions possible. So when we come forward, more on Black kids and the foster care system, and this new report out that's going to shed some light on the conditions of our children. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Climate is king.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that caring for the community means caring about the climate. You might have heard that we announced a pretty bold 12-month, $2 million campaign to do 4 things: increase climate literacy, turn up the volume on communities of color in the climate conversation, connect everyday people with the resources they need to survive and thrive, and highlight frontline climate justice crusaders of color throughout this year. KBLA Talk 1580 will be bringing you insightful interviews on all of our shows to help raise your climate IQ. Each quarter this year, we will also be hosting free climate events in various communities throughout the city with food, fun, and forward-thinking conversations. Thanks to partners like LADWP, Metro, Caltrans, the Sierra Club, the California Community Foundation, the California Endowment, AQMD, MWD, and more. You'll also be hearing more about a couple of national town halls broadcasting live from Los Angeles, to which you will be invited. And we'll be rolling out a robust social media campaign on all our platforms, as well as an outdoor media campaign, all designed to educate, enlighten, and empower you in our fight for climate justice. Caring about the community means caring about the climate. At KBLA Talk 1580, we believe that we really can change the world if we care enough, and care enough, and care enough, and care enough.
Can't sleep with this cold.
Honey,
Honey?
honey, you need NyQuil Severe Honey.
NyQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a dreamy honey taste.
Feeling better, honey? Honey? I'll take that as a yes.
Try NyQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu symptom relief. NyQuil Severe with honey flavor. The nighttime sniffling, sneezing, coughing, aching, fever. Honeylicious, best sleep with a cold. Medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach.
Okay, 3 more climbers, 7 loggers.
Ted's sustainably sourced logging company is growing a new branch,
What about truck driver contracts?
which means a new HR manager will be the first hire to fall.
Then we'll need to staff up the warehouse.
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
We are back, and in this hour, Shantae Armstrong, who's a child welfare advocate and who is the leader of the Embrace Project, is joining us, and also Sunshine Best, a doctoral candidate at Tulane University and a member of the Embrace Task Force, is with us as we talk about Black children and the foster care system. Thank you so much, Shantae, and thank you so much, Sunshine, for being with us in this hour. Let me start with you, Shantae. Tell us what the Embrace Project is.
Sure. Hi. So thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. So the Embrace Project, it stands for Expanding Meaningful Black Relationships and Creating Equity. It's an initiative of KidSave, which is a foster care organization located in Los Angeles, DC, and soon to be Virginia. And KidSave essentially connects foster youth, older foster youth ages 9 through 18 with families for mentoring, fostering, and adoption. And what's unique about KidSave is our Weekend Miracles and other Miracles programs, because it really gives kids a voice and a choice. And the Embrace Project is really here to connect Black families and culturally competent families with Black foster youth to improve the outcomes of Black foster youth. Like you said earlier, Black foster youth are disproportionately represented on a nationwide level, and there's a number of reasons for that. And so, you know, we want to reduce the barriers for families wanting to care for Black foster youth. And I'll leave it there for now.
Sunshine, how did you get involved with this project?
I have a long history with KidSave, actually. I met with them, I think it was probably at 2012 in Los Angeles when I was working with a mutual client. I was actually a personal chef for a mutual client, helping with a foster youth that was in the KidSave program. And I called them in 2022, December, and said, hey, I actually am in the doctoral program, and I know there's not many foster youth alumni who make it this far, and I want to continue to do work with foster youth, and I want to know if you guys are doing any research, can I get involved? And they said, we just happen to be starting off something in EDI relations, related research, and we would love to have you involved. So it was the universe working to keep us in sync.
So tell us, Shantae, what is this report? Give us the top line of this report that's about to be released about foster care children.
So essentially, what I'll say first is that, you know, many people working in the child welfare system already know much of this, but really this report that we collaborated on with Gallup and the Gallup Center for Black Voices, which is titled Americans' Views of Foster Care, Elevating Black Americans' Perspectives and Experiences, is really so we can have data, quantitative and qualitative data, to back up this, the stories and the knowledge of professionals and people who've gone through the system, and so that we can create real change, both in practice and policy. And there are a number of themes that have come about from the and findings from the report, which actually came out publicly in November, which was National Adoption Month. And you can go to embrace.kidsave.org if you want to download the report for free. But we have 10 big findings, which I could talk about for 40 minutes, which I won't do. But
Or just give
I
us
would say,
the top one or two of the findings from the
yeah,
report.
sure. I would say that our biggest one is mentoring is a gateway to adoption. Because we're looking for permanency, right? We're looking for relationships for Black foster youth that are going to be in their lives for a long time. Mentoring is a gateway for adults for adoption. And then I'll say that perceived trauma is a barrier for many families, the trauma of the child coming into their homes. And so we're thinking about what can we do about that? How can we address those? So I'll leave it there in terms of the mental health aspect and the mentoring aspect.
Well, we do know that the whole issue of trauma is big. Sunshine, like I said, I work with a lot of therapists, and some of the stories you hear about what happens to kids who are removed from their homes and put in the foster care system, everything from physical abuse to sexual abuse. We know it's real. Are we seeing any trends in terms of, fewer kids experiencing that kind of trauma and being taken out of their homes? Are there any positive trends in that direction?
I think that what's positive in terms of the trends we can say is that we are recognizing the types of trauma. So there's more research being done about the types of trauma. So meaning that there's the type of what they call maturity loss or maturity, like as you get older, that the experiences of when you are going to school for the first time and your parents are leaving you in kindergarten, like that kind of loss that you feel, like the kids feel, that's normal. Or when you're going to college for the first time and you're moving away from home for the first, those are normal loss. So when you get older and you know that your parents, you have an understanding of how those things work. However, there's situational loss, whereas when it happens through drugs or violence or things that are happening because of situations outside of control that are abnormal, those happen in concentrations that are abnormal at a short period of time in a child's life. And that's what happens to foster kids more often. And that is something that we're coming to understand more. And if we can understand how that affects children at certain times, we can understand how to deal with that and how to mitigate that a little bit better. And I think that in terms of the public health context, we can approach and mitigate that a little bit differently. And that's something I think is being measured a little bit better so we can evaluate it more.
And so, Shanta, you alluded to the fact that there were some reasons why Black children are overrepresented in foster care. What are those reasons? Why are our kids overrepresented?
Well, honestly, I'll say that the biggest one is systemic racism. And there are a number of studies that talk about this, and Dorothy Roberts is someone I'll reference who talks about systemic racism for not for Black children in particular, but also in general for Brown and Black folks, and how it affects the Black communities that these children are coming from. And if you look at the data too, most children who are in foster care are in foster care due to neglect from poverty. And so, of course, you have many children. You have also cases that are not from that, but the majority are. And so we're really looking at, how can we support and identify the cases and how can we support and identify the cases that are not necessarily the faults of the people who, the biological families, due to not their willingness to want to care for their children, but their inability, right? So how can we provide support for families who want to do more and who can't?
It's interesting that you said that about poverty, because in Los Angeles and other big cities where there's large homeless populations, how is that treated, Sunshine? If you are homeless, living in your car, you hear these stories about people living in tents. Are those kids automatically removed from their parents?
Oftentimes, yes. And I can say in Louisiana, which is where I'm doing my education now, the systemic racism is just so layered, especially being Louisiana, having the highest incarceration rate in the country with Angola. It seems what I've been telling with Embrace, one of the roles that I play here within this group, other than offering lived experience, having been someone who grew up in foster care from 3 to 17, is I offer something that in research we call legal epidemiology, is where we look at laws and policies that actually harm communities. And that's something that's directly applicable to obviously systemic racism and the foster care system. In terms of poverty, in terms of the criminal justice system, when you actually have a state where the minimum wage has not changed since 2009, and we keep people in poverty, what the cost of rent is constantly going up. I've been in this state for 11 years and it's more than doubled. So yes, they're taking children away. The cost of food is constantly increasing. So people are left with no choice but to do whatever they can to take care of their families. But in my case, I have an incarcerated parent or had an incarcerated parent. The criminal justice system is biased against us. My family is immigrant family. We come from the Caribbean. So that we automatically look different, we sound different. So the xenophobia working against us, the level of intersectionality that affected us between being female, being Black, being immigrant, like there's so many layers. Even though my father joined the Air Force to come to this country, it still worked against us. And so, yes, I was taken away at 3, and it completely, it sabotaged everything that happened in our life. So yeah, it happens to a lot of
And
people.
you were taken away at 3, and what happened? You said you stayed.
I stayed in foster care. There were people who argued to let me go back with my dad. And then he didn't handle stress well, I guess. And there were abusive situations there. So I was taken away again. They sent me back to Barbados because they wanted me to be with family opposed to be in care. But then they said, because I was already a ward of the state, that was kidnapping. So they took me back out of Barbados to bring me back in care, which you would think that the state would be like, let's save the money, let her stay there. We wouldn't have to do that. But no, they wanted to control the situation. So they brought me back up here eventually I went through the system, had all the different types of abuse you mentioned earlier. There's not many things that I now study, which is also another whole facet that we can talk about, which Shantae knows. We were talking about this earlier. I'm about to release an article about some of my experiences in foster care for Embrace that talks about some of the things that I endured and what it's like to grow up in a system where I go through all of these different things, and then you have to be expected to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? So I go through all the system, I go through the care system, and then eventually end up in Toronto because I go through a situation where they realize that the foster care system is overloaded in the state of New York. And I have a sister because my mom wanted me to have somebody that I wouldn't be alone. And she was born while my mother was incarcerated. And they only let the parents stay with the baby for 6 months in that particular maximum security prison. So that was a whole thing. So eventually she stayed with a bunch of different people, ended up with me in care because babies are cute and my sister is lighter complected. So everybody wants the light skinned babies. That's a whole other thing, another level of intersectionality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she eventually ended with me. We go to this amusement park type of place where I remember we had to dress up and everyone's making a big deal about smile and look nice and don't mess up your stuff. And they're giving you candy and all these people are walking up and touching you, smiling, looking at you. And there's a lot of white people and they're all making a big deal about how cute my sister is. And I come to find out that this was like an adoption fair. And so they're looking at kids to adopt and just like parents. So I just remember feeling it was really uncomfortable. And later I come to learn that because my mother never lost her parental rights, despite the fact she was incarcerated, the courts were racing to remove them from her. Despite her charges, she never lost them. My father lost his parental rights. So they were trying to take them from her so they can adopt me and my sister away so we wouldn't be a burden on the state. But we had relatives in Toronto. So we ended up moving to Canada. And so I ended up going to Canada into a foster care system up there, which ended up in a way being better in some contexts, but worse in others. But I ended up being shipped away because that didn't work out. So
who made that decision that you would be shipped to Canada?
My mom made the decision to stop my sister and I from being separated in New York.
I see.
So
yeah, going to Canada was an option to try to keep you together.
Correct. But I still ended up being separated because it didn't work out with the place that I was in. So I grew up feeling as a child that I wasn't wanted anywhere because I wasn't wanted. I didn't understand at the time in Barbados the reason why I had to get shipped back, but I wasn't wanted in New York. And then I wasn't in New York, like no matter where I wasn't fitting in, I wasn't wanted. I couldn't stay. So like growing up, I knew what it felt like being an outsider, being Afro-Caribbean, right? I knew what it felt like, so I knew what it needed, what the need was of that feeling of wanting to have community and cultural competency. I knew what it felt like to be a foster kid, to want to feel like I had family. I now know what it feels like as a public health practitioner to see the damage that causes a disparity. So
Yeah,
that's
hold that thought for me, Sunshine. We definitely want to continue. What a riveting story about your own experiences. And now you, as you said, is a professional in this area. When we come forward, I want to continue this conversation about foster care kids, overrepresentation of African Americans, and what we can do. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
More of Areva Martin when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Video has surfaced showing the woman accused of attempting to burn down the birth home of Martin Luther King Jr., hanging and setting fire to a dog. 26-year-old Lanisha Henderson appeared in Fulton County Superior Court for her preliminary hearing. She's been charged with criminal attempt to commit a felony of first-degree arson. Prosecutors say Henderson had disappeared from her mom's home in Florida before the incident in Atlanta. Video from security cameras on the campus of Florida A&M University show Henderson with a family dog hung from a tree. They say she then fired several shots at the dog before setting fire to him. The Tuskegee Morehouse Football Classic is returning to Columbus, Georgia. The game began in 1936 as an entertainment event for the African-American civilian community and U.S. Army soldiers in the Columbus-Fort Benning area. Alumni from both schools rallied to have it return after leaving in 2020. The game will be held October 5th with kickoff at 2 p.m. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Your evening drive through Anaheim continues to run heavy over 30 minutes on the 91 East between Highway 57 and Gibson Canyon Road. Making our way through Elysian Park, continue to watch for severe flooding, closing the on-ramp of the 5 South from Riverside Drive, as well as the connector to the southbound 110, and heavy traffic continues from Los Feliz Boulevard. Back in Long Beach on the 710 South before the 405, watch for a 10 to 15-minute traffic jam on the 91 as an accident involving a motorcyclist remains on the right shoulder. And in Santa Fe Springs, an accident remains on the right shoulder of the 605 South at the 5, and heavy delays continue over 15 minutes from Rose Hill Road.
If you like using debit over credit, shouldn't you also get rewarded? Well, now you can with Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases with no fees, period. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Tiger Woods said he's going to play at next week's Genesis Invitational here in the LA area. The PGA event starts next Thursday at the Riviera Country Club in Pacific Palisades. Tiger has competed in only 2 events since withdrawing from the Masters last year. Super Bowl week represents another milestone for Las Vegas Raiders president Sandra Douglas Morgan. In 2022, Douglas Morgan became the first Black woman to serve as president of an NFL franchise. With the Super Bowl in Vegas, Douglas Morgan is now the first Black woman to be vice chair of the Super Bowl host committee. Today's Black History Month sports moment: on August 2nd, 2012, at the Summer Olympics in London, 16-year-old Gabby Douglas became the first African-American woman in Olympic history to win a gold medal in the all-around competition. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. This year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen. Plus, a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black. Your black.
Listen up, City of Los Angeles renters that live in rent-controlled units. Landlords can now increase your rent by 4%. Know these 3 facts. The rent increase is allowed February 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2024. An extra 1% per utility up to 6% can be added if the landlord pays the entire gas and electric bill. And illegal rent increase complaints can be filed at housing.lacity.org. Check if you live in a rent-controlled unit and learn more at housing.lacity.org. Be informed, be protected, be at home.
If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes, turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation for KBLA Talk 1580. KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back and we're talking about African-American kids in the foster care system, why we are disproportionately represented, and what we can do to encourage more families to adopt kids, particularly Black kids, out of foster care. So, Sunshine, you were telling us about the horrific experience, I guess, you and your sister had with the system. Now, were you all eventually adopted or placed in a foster care home, or did you just age out of the system?
I think they call what I call self-emancipation. They'd say I ran away, but I took myself out because I figured I could do better on my own. So I took myself out at 17. My sister aged out, so that's how I exited the system on my own. My sister, she ended up doing well on her own in terms of she ended up going to school in Toronto. She became a nurse, so she's doing well. She became a traveling nurse, and she's got her family in Toronto, and she stays there. I took my own path, and I worked, and I got degrees later in life after working, but it was a long path, and it was not a traditional path at all. And it was very trying, but I did my best to not become a statistic, so to speak. And I was very mindful of what was expected of me because it was always rubbed in my face as that I was told, constantly reminded that people like me don't do X. I was always told that. I was always told. I was actually told by a foster parent, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember thinking, I don't know what it's called, but I want to wear a suit and I want to walk into the office and they call me Miss Best and the secretary, and when they would be secretary, call me Miss Best, and I walk in a building and I own things, and they said that was unrealistic and the secretary would be a good job for me. And I remember hearing that, and I just thought, that's not what they tell other people. That's not what they tell other kids. And so I remember always having it in the back of my mind to defy, and the seeds have always been planted to like see how other people seem to be successful. I don't know how they got there, but they were always like the Martin Luther Kings in the world and Medgar Evers, and they all seem to be dead. I don't want all my heroes to be dead. There has to be living people who did shit. So I needed to see it. So I wanted to try to be that. So that's part of the reason why I also called Embrace, and why I also want to say thank you to you for even having me here and having Embrace here, because Embrace's work is extremely important for the fact that they're doing something that public health schools and research groups aren't doing. They're not doing the research. I'm in public health. I do conferences. I went to the APHA, which is the American Public Health Association. No one's talking about foster care. No one's talking about the kids. They're talking about everything else in the world. They're talking about abortion. They're talking about child planning and all that others. No one's talking about foster care. So Embrace is doing it, you're doing it, and you're doing it the right way. Not only are you talking about the agencies are doing the research and uplifting the voices of that need to be heard in the disparities, but you're also showing people like myself and others in a good light, because the media doesn't represent us very well. So thank you then.
Oh, no, thank you. And Shantae, I know you are a foster care parent yourself. What has your experience been like?
I'm not a foster care parent. I'm a parent. I'm a mother of two Black boys. And
Oh, I got that wrong. I don't know where I read that. I thought I read someplace that you were a foster
probably
care.
in my bio it says mother, but I used to be a caseworker in for foster children. I worked with traumatized kids in New York and the Bay Area, and grew up in Brooklyn, and grew up in poverty and grew up in Black communities. And I don't have the direct foster care experience, but I have worked in it for 15 years. And Sunshine, you're about to make me cry thinking about all of the things that you went through, but also the success of it, right? We're so happy to have people like Sunshine on our task force. It's really important for us to have people with lived experience who can tell their stories, because it's really, really important to hear the stories and to see that it's possible to go beyond what can be really challenging and hard for many. We're not here to lie and say everything is great about the foster care system. That's not what we're here to do, right? There are many things that need to be changed. And I think that it's important to attack the issues from many different angles. And one of them is prevention. One of them is providing community when family is not possible, and also change narratives and show that when people are doing things that are important and are already working in Black communities, how can we take those things and amplify them and make them bigger?
Yeah, let's talk about what based on all the experience that you both have with the system, what you all think needs to change so that we can get more kids out of the system and into loving homes. Sunshine, having been a foster care kid in homes with a foster care parent who told you couldn't achieve certain things. How do we prevent kids from landing up or ending up, I should say, in homes like that?
I think what Shantae said is dead on, based on not just what her experience is, but also what Embrace has found through the research and what my lived experience has shown. It has to be multifaceted approach, right? It has to be different angles. So it has to happen on the policy end, but also I believe and this is where my public health angle is, and why I keep butting heads with the universities, because they're teaching one angle and I'm coming through the other angle. I'm coming through where infrastructure fails you, where the government isn't working, where policy isn't working. There has to be community sovereignty, and it has to come from the bottom up. So I think from the foster care angle, we need to come together and start showing through media, through people, through lived experience, through community, public-private partnerships, start showcasing, start getting together and doing things like, that how the media likes to do those 30 under 30, 40 under 40 stories? I think that's nonsense. Half of those people all have the best lives and all the things lined up for them in order for them to achieve that. I think that we need to start highlighting people in the community who beat the odds and still won. I think they start highlighting foster kids who are killing it and they're doing things and are highlighting things. So I feel like it's important to start showcasing success stories, because that's going to change the narrative and make people start looking at foster kids differently. And maybe they're going to start up and start mentoring kids, right? And start looking at them to try to pull them in And maybe they'll start sponsoring them to go to school, and maybe somebody will come up and invite them for Thanksgiving and give them a place to stay for Christmas. And, you know, I mean, I have a whole idea set of programs that I would love to get funded to start taking care of kids before they age out of the system and prepare them for life after they age out of the system.
Yeah,
And I'll just add, can I add to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I just I completely agree with everything Sunshine said. And one thing I'll just say is that also telling people what they're eligible for, what they're not eligible for in terms of being mentors, in terms of being foster parents or adoptive parents, because we found out that when we did the study, 68% of folks didn't even know if they were even eligible to become parents. And you know, there were everybody said that, and from different diverse backgrounds. But we also found that, you know, men, LGBT folks, they said, well, I don't even know if I can do this, right? And we're like, yes, yes, we want you. If you're a safe, stable, loving home, we want you to come forward. We want you to take care of kids in whatever capacity that means for you, whether that means you do 1 weekend a month, you know, you make a phone call, you can host a child in your home. Like, these are important. It's important to meet folks where they're at and say, like, yes, you can do this, and we're going to work with you, and we're going to support you, right? Support families who want to do it, but don't know or haven't been able to because of, you know, different structural housing reasons or financial reasons. So that's where the policy change comes in as well. It's saying, like, well, how can we give more supports to families and people who want to help, and community members, right, who are already doing this, while also saying these are success stories. How can we connect that? And I wanted to tell you, Areva, that Charity Chandler Cole said to say hi to you. She said, "Oh, you're going to be on her? Okay, tell her I said hi."
I said you're the best mentor, and say hi.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I love the work that she does. She's clearly one of those examples you talk about, Sunshine, that defied all the odds and, you know, has her PhD and has
Dr. Charity.
Yeah, has been an incredible example of what foster care kids or kids who come out of foster care can do. One of the things you guys said, though, that really piqued my interest was this notion that of who can adopt, because I can remember hearing people say that they tried to adopt, but they were disqualified, like a single person, or I think one of you mentioned, you know, a gay couple. And I think there's a lot of maybe misconceptions about who is eligible in our system to adopt kids. So when we come forward, I want to talk about that, because perhaps there are people who are excluding themselves when they would otherwise be eligible to adopt a kid. So we want to make sure the broadest range of people who are eligible know that they're eligible and, you know, can take advantage of the opportunities to bring a child into their home. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
LADWP is proud to partner with KBLA to share with you how to start the new year without bill worries. We're here to help if you're behind on your bill or need help staying current. Sign up anytime online for Level Pay to set predictable monthly payments throughout the year, including for past due amounts. You can also check out the special extended pay arrangements of up to 48 months to help pay down your bill. If you're a senior or income qualified, you may be eligible for Easy Save to receive discounts and also qualify for free and discounted energy and water saving devices. You can get up to $15,000 for past due water and or sewer bills, and up to $3,000 for electric bills. But you gotta act fast. Funding is limited. You can reduce your past due bills and kick off the year right, because here at LADWP, we're here to help. Visit ladwp.com/cares today and find out more.
A psoriasis flare-up can make a walk in the park, well, no walk in the park.
It's that obvious, huh? I've tried so many lotions and creams, but I still have symptoms.
So those don't do enough to treat the inflammation beneath the skin, leaving you with those uncontrolled symptoms.
Makes sense, but what else can I do?
You can get real with your dermatologist so they can help you get clear. Make an appointment and, oh, you're already on it.
Hi, yes, I'd like to make an appointment.
Get real clear about psoriasis at letsgetrealclear.com. Sponsored by Advent.
Okay, 3 more climbers, 7 loggers.
Head Sustainably Sourced Logging Company is growing a new branch,
What about truck driver contracts?
which means a new HR manager will be the first hire to fall.
Then we'll need to staff up the warehouse.
Indeed can help him hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed, you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. 120,000 miles of night drives, daily commutes, and who knows how many.
Are we there yet?
Through countless fixes, elbow grease, and a new radiator, you kept your ride alive. With eBay Motors, you have over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. Clips music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back and we're talking about the foster care system and Black kids in that system and what it means for parents who may, or people who want to adopt, but may not understand what their rights are or their ability to. So help us understand, Sunshine, who can adopt? Because I've heard people say, I want to adopt, but either I'm too old, or maybe I don't make enough money, or maybe I don't live in a nice enough house, or something to that effect. Why are those people wrong?
I believe it's different by state, right, Shantae? It depends state by state. The rules have changed definitely based on recent, from what I understand, recently from what people think they have. I know that there are more lax or more open for single parents in certain conditions than they used to be. And they're definitely more open for gay parents than there used to be as well.
Yeah, and it depends really on the county or the state because each state is run differently. Like in LA County is run separately from different parts of LA. And so there are different adoption requirements depending on the county or the state. But generally, anybody who's an adult that has space for a child in like a bed, sometimes it's a room. You know, that can be a barrier to adoption is if there's not an extra room in the home. And typically we see ages about 25 to 50, maybe a little older adopting, people who are at least, I would say, middle income adopting, because I would say that, you can't be in survival mode in order to adopt a child, right? You have to be able to take care of yourself and that child. So there are certain financial requirements. Definitely anybody in the LGBTQIA community can adopt. There are certain religious organizations who may, want to advocate against that. Kids Save and Embrace are definitely not part of that. We want, as long as it's a safe, stable, loving home, please, mentor, adopt, and depending on your record and how old your record is, and depending on a felony, if it's a felony, what the felony, like there are different, I would say, barriers to adoption in that case. And, that's one of the things that I don't know that KidSave is advocating necessarily, that felonies should be put aside for adoption, because we do want the children to be safe. But depending on the nature of the crime and how old it is, looking at, is there policy that can be created to be more lenient if there's support around, like, hey, let's maybe get a few extra home visits. But if we want more people to come forward and adopt who have changed their lives around and who are now safe adults, I would say that how can we look into policy around supporting that change, right? And so you do need to go through administrative paperwork, and have agreed to have caseworkers visit your house, so it depends on where you're living. One of the ways that Embrace wants to move forward is a pilot program where we're also providing somebody who's been through this process and can walk people through it and say, so that it's not so overwhelming, because the administrative aspect can be, overwhelming if you don't know how to deal with it. But if you have somebody there to walk you through and say, look, this is how you do it, this is what you need to do, this is what you need prepared, it's definitely manageable.
That's something else that came up in the research, as well as the concern for support. And so Kids Safe and Embrace definitely offer that level of support.
And so how do we get the word out? So you just, described, Shantae, that different counties have different rules about who is eligible for adopting. That's not necessarily commonly known. Folks may not know, like, how would they even go and find out in their county what the rules are and how they would even, start the process. I know there are a lot of private adoption agencies where people have to pay a lot of money. Again, could be a barrier for Black families that don't have the money to pay for private adoption. So how can families find out, or people who are interested in adopting find out about those county, those adoption agencies where you're not having to come in with a lot of cash?
Well, I would say I'm always plugging the website, embrace.kidsave.org. We have a resources page, and on that resources page, you can find ways to check if you're eligible, what the eligibility requirements are in your state, in your territory, or in your county. And there's also tribal resources. I'll go ahead and say that, childwelfare.gov also has great resources. But don't go there, go to embrace.kidsave.org. And, the disproportionate representation of Indigenous people and children is also high in the foster care system. And so we're thinking about how can we also support different children who are represented in ways that they shouldn't be represented. One thing I did want to point out too is, that we're focusing on reducing barriers for Black families in order to care for Black children, but also to train and do curriculum for anybody who wants to care for Black families. Because the truth is, if there's not enough Black families to come forth, like we want anybody to be able to care for children. But a component of that is cultural competency, right? And so with cultural competence, what cultural competency is the ability to understand, appreciate, and interact with people who are different from our own. And there's many ways that can be enhanced. If you go to the website, there's resources for that. But in terms of foster care, something simple as like, if a adoptive parent is a different race from their adoptive child, bring in a mentor who's the same race or who has similar might have a hobby that the child wants to learn, and connect them, right? There's nothing to be embarrassed about or ashamed when you're trying to get children what they need, because the truth is if you don't connect children with people from their community, like, it can be detrimental in the long run to their self-esteem. But if you do,
and I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to ask you before we run out of time, Sunshine, have you seen any research on that? Like, are there any disadvantages, say, to a Black kid being adopted into a white family or to a Hispanic or an Asian family?
That's something that I've been very, very adamant about, that there is not a lot of research on foster kids in general. And I have been forcing and begging for that. And I think one of the reasons why there's not a lot of research on it is because it's not a sexy topic. The way that I've learned that how research works in academia is whatever topic that the governments or whatever private agencies want to get funded is usually the hot topics, or whatever's attractive, whatever's politically attractive, or whatever's the thing that gets the most attention. Like, we keep hearing about malaria in terms of, or Bill and Melinda Gates, or now climate change, but no one's really talking about foster care issues. So this is why I keep complimenting Embrace. It's not because I'm involved with them, it's because I specifically know that nobody's doing this. No one is talking about this. So I feel like this is where public-private partnerships have to happen.
But you're saying there's no real research out
Nope.
there right now that
Nope.
answers that question.
Correct. Absolutely.
Ooh,
I
in
mean,
the absence of
anecdotally, we can say we've seen this, we've seen that. I know people who've seen this and we've seen that. We see people talking about it. We see magazines or journalists talk about it, but there's no formal actual academic research done on the epidemiological level. No.
Mhm. In the absence of that, I mean, just, you know, your experience, everything you know, having been in the system yourself now, working, you know, as a professional, do you think it's a good idea?
I think that the mistake that a lot of people make is that there's a mistake that people believe that Black people are a monolith, right? That we all think, feel, act the same, and that they forget that we are a part of a diaspora. So I know that there's Africans, there's South Americans, there's Caribbeans, there's the LGBT community, there's all these religious factions. So there's different factors that need to be acknowledged culturally. So having the right parent, the right family, the right support, that all matters.
Yeah. Great point. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Shantae. Thank you so much, Sunshine. Really appreciate the work you both are doing with the Embrace Project. Hope that research that you just identified that's missing in this area, that, you know, universities and researchers and scientists start to take it on, because we definitely need that empirical data. Again, congratulations on your project and the work in this space. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers in the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't touch that dial. Thanks, ladies.